Is that recording?
Yes.
I'm yawning and I can see my breath. It's June and I can see my breath.
Something wrong with this picture.
This is not good. Welcome to Port Crescent State Park.
Port Crescent State Park is at the very tip of the thumb of Michigan. You've been waiting to do that. It's 640 acres. Most of it's the campground and a dark sky preserve, which is in a day use area a couple of miles from here. And it's all along the shore of Lake Huron.
The town of Port Crescent no longer exists, actually, and instead it's in Port Austin. The reason for that is because, as we mentioned, we were at the petroglyphs. The fire of 1881 pretty much wiped through the entire northern part of the thumb, a couple millions of acres, and it literally wiped out the town of Port Crescent. And so the only thing that was left was just a few remnants here and there of buildings. And here at the park, or at least what was now the parkland, was this really big chimney from a sawmill that used to stood on this property. And all that's left of it now was just a couple few feet that they actually ended up restoring. But the majority of the chimney was taken down in the 60s, which is kind of too bad.
Yeah, and the camp host here was telling us that the locals actually were kind of upset about that. It was it was the tallest thing in the thumb for the longest time, was this chimney from the sawmill. And then when they took it down, people said, oh, it's kind of a local landmark, right? Why are we losing it? But they ended up taking it down. And so that was just really kind of interesting history. And it's actually right near the camp host spot is where you can find that chimney out near the front. But they have a new lead ranger here at the park, and they are working on updating some things. There's some other stuff they found that's historical, and they're going to try to do something with that over time if they have a chance. So that's kind of cool. I guess I would mention, as I mentioned, camp host. Again, if you have a camp host, go visit with them. They know a lot of stuff about the area that you're in. The couple that we met, we had talked to them this morning over coffee, and this is the first year they've been hosting, but they've been coming to this park for 38 years.
Yeah, they knew a lot about it. I mean, he was telling me about some local attractions to go see, the farmer's market, a cemetery, the Lighthouse. Definitely good resources. I mean, for sure, because they know this area very, very well.
Yeah, so definitely a good resource to tap into.
The campground here is actually really nice. It's right on the bay, but the sites are a little bit, I would say, wonky, and only it's the best word I can come up with, simply because they're all over the place. There's some really big sites, there's some really little sites, there's sites that are paved, there are sites on grass, some on sand. They kind of just fit 130 some sites wherever they could in this place.
And that's part of it. And what's kind of cool about this place is there are some that are right along the sand dunes. We're in a site tonight. Site 78 it backs right up to a dune. So that's kind of cool. They really kind of fit the sites in around the trees, which is a great way to do it. It just means, though, that you're going to have some really oddly shaped sites. One of the things to keep in mind, though, also is the road's kind of narrow going through the park. And the rigs that can fit in here, I mean, people are fitting all kinds of rigs in here, but sometimes it's a little tricky. And you may have a situation where if you have a larger rig, you're going to take up most of your site with your rig, and then you'll end up with your truck or your tow vehicle parked out more alongside the road. Yeah,
and most people, it seems now, almost have like 2 cars per sites because they've come with multiple family members or groups, and they're parked like parallel along the road. So it makes it a little bit tricky if you've got a bigger rig trying to maneuver in and out to your campsite, because you can't just pull across and then back in, because there's likely going to be cars parked on both sides of the road just because of the way the camp's laid out.
Yeah, there'll be cars, trucks, trees,
kids,
sand dunes, all kinds of things to maneuver around. It'll be a good test for you, but it's worth it. It's a really nice campground, I think.
Yeah, one thing we did notice is dunes change. They come and go, and they take over the land, they recede. But in this particular case, we noticed there's a whole row of campsites that probably had beachfront access at one point, but the dunes have taken over, and in fact the power poles are still in those sites, but they are buried in the sand, and so those are no longer sites that are usable because, well, the dunes took over.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to go back in this place in time and see if all of these sites that back up to sand dunes used to have a beach view, because you can't really see much of the lake.
No,
you're looking at a dune, but it's still kind of cool.
It's still a really nice site, but yes, it's there's a couple sites that had waterfront, quote unquote, waterfront access, but there's only like 3 or 4 of those.
Right. Yeah, but there are access points along the way in the campground here that you can get out to the beach, such as it is. It's kind of small right now because the water level is really high in Lake Huron, as well as the other Great Lakes, which is a good thing in some ways, but it means you lose your beach. And speaking of power poles, you had talked about some of them were buried. At least the sites that are closed. It looks like it's 20 and 30 amp here. I haven't noticed anything that shows that it's been upgraded to the 50 amp service. So keep that in mind. If it's something you need.
Oh, as well as every site has its own power pole. But in a couple cases, the power poles, because some of the sites are extremely large, the power pole may be way off to the other side somewhere. So bring an extension cord, because if you have to maneuver and jimmy your rig in between trees or other people's campsites, or if you want to put up a tent or screen room, make sure you have an extension cord, because you are going to be stretching it a little bit in some cases.
Yeah, and the sites being different sizes is really interesting. I mean, we're in a site here. I said we're in 78 by the dune, and we're in the van, right? It's Class B, and we're taking up most of the pad that's here, most of the site. There's another site we had looked at originally. We were maybe going to be up on the hill, and we could have fit a fleet of road trucks in that site. So it's really hard to say, but when you're looking at the reservation system, I noticed on this one there weren't as many pictures for this park yet, so they need to get that updated. But maybe call and talk to the ranger about where the sites are at, because some are along the water and the dunes, others are up on a hill, more in a forested type area, really is what it looks like.
Well, and a few back up to the main road too. So depending, if that's a big deal, but those are more in the woods, so it depends on the feel you want to look. Or if you're camping with a large group, you'll want to look for some of those larger sites, or if you're by yourself. There's a lot of tents here. That is one thing we noticed. There's a lot of people in tents, and but there are also two cabins. There's a small mini cabin, I think, that holds 6, and a larger cabin that holds, I think, somewhere between 10 and 20 people. So that'd be good for a family outing. But good, a lot of options here. It's just a really nice place.
Yeah, and the big cabin I noticed is kind of tucked away down a little side road. I mean, you can see it from the main campground loop, but you're kind of off on your own, and be nice for some privacy if you had a little family gathering or something.
Yeah. Oh, and as well, there's a really nice playground for the kids. It's kind of in the center of the park. It's one of the modern upgraded ones, so it's not just a set of swings and a slide, but it's a really nice one of those modern. I call them plastic, but they're not really. They're the really nice new kind of playgrounds.
Yeah. Overall, though, nice campground. People seem to be enjoying it and having fun, and that's what it's all about.
So we're hanging out at the Dark Sky Preserve. Except for the dark sky that currently is going on right now is not exactly the dark sky I had in mind when we booked this trip. It was supposed to be clear and sunny, and now it's cloudy and stormy. We're getting ready to storm. So I'm not sure if we're actually going to get to see stars tonight, but maybe it'll blow through. But if you're not really familiar with what a dark sky preserve is, it's something that Michigan has at a few of the state parks where there's no light pollution. So they've built platforms and have different interpretive programs throughout the year, depending on whether there's a comet coming through or the meteorites or whatever is going on. Or you can just come out here, whenever and hang out. This one also has birds of prey. There's some binoculars, so I suppose at different times of the year, there's going to be different things that you can see out here. The day use part of Port Crescent State Park is actually located 2 miles away from the campground area. So if you're staying there, but you want to come out, check out the Dark Sky Preserve, or look for birds, or go to the river, you're probably going to either want to drive it or ride your bike. You could walk it, but it's a pretty decent distance, although there is a pretty wide shoulder, and we did notice some people out there. But you just have to keep that in mind, that you're not going to just be able to pop over there, because it is quite a distance down the road through some private property.
The day use area at Port Crescent State Park is a little different than some of the other day use areas we've been to, and mostly I think it's because it's about the dunes and the beach and some trails that are here.
Yeah, I mean, the big feature here is the Dark Sky Preserve. That's really what this is for, as well as what was the beach when the water levels aren't high. So while there are a couple picnic tables and a couple grills, they're really just kind of off to the side of the parking lot. It's not like a big open grassy day use space that we've seen at other state parks. So I don't know if it's someplace you'd want to come hang out and just have a picnic, but I mean, it's available for you.
It is, and it might be, depending if the water levels are lower and there's more of a beach, it'd be a place to kind of get away from the water, maybe out of the sun a little bit, and have a picnic. But it's not like, because of where the parking lot is in relation to the dunes, and then the beach are on the other side of the dunes, and the lake is, you can't see anything from the parking lot or where the picnic tables and the grills are at.
Well, that's a good point, though, too. It's kind of a hike up and over the dunes to get to the beach, even if you do want to go. So you're not going to just be going back and forth or taking your wagon or anything. It's going to be just kind of a walkover.
Yeah, and there's sort of a winding trail. There's a dunes interpretive trail here, or a nature trail that they have, and kind of I think it's 3/4 of a mile. It's a loop if you want to do that, and you can stop and see the beach. There are interpretive signs that tell you things about the dunes and the wildlife and the ecology that's out here. Unfortunately, it looks like they've been here a long time and they are very faded. So the DNR could use a little help with funding. So if you don't have your annual recreation passport yet, buy one. It's really cheap, but together they add up, and we can help support the state parks. Or go camping and pay for a camping spot.
Yeah, all that funding goes pretty much to pay for everything within the DNR and the campgrounds. So your support of the state parks is going back to keep them up and running.
Yeah, because the overall DNR budget, there's actually a relatively small percentage that goes to the state parks. And so it's the recreation passport and the camping fees that help support that. But enough of the PSA for that. There's a couple miles of trails here in addition to what's out here on the dunes. And then there's also a hiking trail system over by the campground.
Yes, and based on what we could tell, it is probably a couple miles worth in the 2 different sections. You get to both of them from the parking lot. So just make sure you take some water with you. The trails conditions, as we've seen, are totally varied depending on the weather and what Mother Nature has done over the winter. So we are in a dune area. That means a lot of the boardwalk is covered with sand at certain times of the year, especially right after winter because it's blown around. And if you're not familiar with how the dunes work, that is very common in pretty much all of the Great Lakes. So we were in an area where we're going along on the boardwalk, and all of a sudden the boardwalk's filled with 3 feet of sand. I mean, it just happens. So just be prepared, wear the right kind of shoes.
Yeah, dunes move. People don't realize that because they look big piles of sand, but they move around a lot, and they cover areas that were open at one time. But you can, when you're walking around out here, you can see where there used to be other trails along the beach or through the dunes, or there's one spot where there's a bench where you can sit, and I think you used to be able to sit and look out at Lake Huron and enjoy the view, and now you're looking at a wall of sand because the dune moved and grew, and so.
And even a lot of the fencing has been covered up by the sand just because it does move. It's very common.
It's a really interesting part of nature, I guess, to see that happening. But anyway, so this is a really nice area. There's actually a lot of places, depending if you wanted to take we talked about the dark sky preserve being out here because there's no light pollution at night here. So there's places you could go to the deck that you were on. Yeah. You could go out to the beach. You could come out on this little dune trail out here.
On one of the benches even.
Bring a flashlight or something so you can see when you're coming and going. But yeah, then just sit out here on one of the benches or put a blanket out. It'd be a really cool place to be very dark and maybe see some stars if there's no clouds. Or unfortunately, like our luck, usually when it's clear,
a full moon.
There's a full moon. And that's what you're seeing instead of the stars. But one of these times, we're going to find a dark sky area on a clear night when there's a new moon, and you will be very happy.
Right.
Until then.
We get what we get, and we enjoy the trails and just being out in nature. This is it's definitely more rustic feeling, and you're away from everything, and it's just a good place. I really like this one.
Yeah, this is cool. Behind me is what would normally be a beach for the day use area here at Port Crescent. But as we've talked about, the water levels in Lake Huron are very high this year, so we've lost most of the beach here. In the water behind me also is a concrete slab, and it's essentially all that's left of what was a sand mining operation that was underway in this area many years ago. And to give you an idea, it's out a little ways into the water at this point, and it's supposed to be on the beach in the day use area. That doesn't exist. It's all underwater right now. But another little interesting tidbit is we have another random Henry Ford connection even to this park. And that is that the sand mining operation used to help provide sand to the Ford Motor Company to help make windshields for their automobiles.
We were chatting with the camp host this morning, and they were telling us that Port Crescent actually has 3 miles of beachfront shoreline along here, which is really cool. Except for the fact that, as you've heard us say before, we've had such a wet spring, summer. I don't even know what season we're in right now because it's been raining so much. But the water level is almost 2 feet high, or higher than normal. And there's not really a whole lot of beach right now. So you can still walk that 3-mile stretch, but you're going to be in the water pretty much the whole time because the dunes are kind of eroding. The beach is non-existent right now. There's been quite a few people out, but you just have to know that you can walk from one end to the other, but you're going to be in the water. I did see a few kids playing out in it. I haven't ventured out myself yet to find out what the water temperature is like, but kids are resilient, so you never know. It could be freezing and they'd be out there anyway. But It's nice and peaceful out here, and this is another area where you could come and watch the stars. The platform's nice for the dark sky, but if you want to get away from people and have an unobstructed view with no trees, doing it down here on the beach would be awesome. You always want to tap into resources anytime you're visiting someplace new, whether that's the camp host, the ranger, or friends, family, colleagues, people that you know that have lived or grown up in the area. I had a coworker that this is where she grew up, a few miles from here. So when she found out I was coming, she gave me a whole list of things to go and see and do. And we went and did them. And I think it was really cool. It was nice that I wouldn't have known about some of those otherwise. So like a lighthouse, kind of a boardwalk that you could go out on, a really awesome ice cream place. We got some really awesome ice cream at the Grindstone General Store. It's one of the buildings that was built in the 1800s, so it's still standing and they've converted it. They make their own homemade ice cream. And let me tell you, their ice cream, they're not kidding when they say their scoops are the size of softballs. And if you order the double, you're literally getting like a half gallon of ice cream. It's ridiculous. So order the baby scoop because it's like a normal amount of ice cream and it's still ridiculous.
I was going to say, the baby scoop is not normal. It's more than normal. Did you get a big enough cone?
No, we could get a couple more. This was the baby scoop.
And there's 4 sizes.
Yeah, I don't know. This is ridiculous.
This is the smallest of 4.
Needs this much ice cream. Yes, they do. Oh, just got it on my nose. All mine.
So we went to Port Austin. We went to Grindstone City, which is where we found the ice cream. We went further down the coast and found a lighthouse. It's actually at a county park. And it's just, it was a little rainy today when we were out and about. But that's one of those things where locals and others can give you resources and tell you places to go check out. And it was kind of nice. When we had the heaviest rain is actually we were inside the Lighthouse Museum checking that out. So that worked out really well.
Well, and I felt that normally we end up visiting places when it's nice and sunny, but actually being at a lighthouse on a day when it's cold and rainy and foggy, you actually kind of got a better feel for what the lighthouse keepers went through. This is still a functioning lighthouse. There's nobody there watching it anymore because the lights have all been converted over to LED. So they go on when it's dark and they turn off when it's light, and they use very little power, electricity, very, new technology. But the museum was cool. We learned a lot about the history of some of the lighthouse keepers, the shipwrecks that have sunk over the years right off the coast and different things. So I think it was a really nice stop there.
Yeah, that was definitely worth driving down there. It's not very far from the park.
Maybe 15 minutes, maybe.
Some 15, 20 minutes. Depends how fast you drive, I guess, and what rig you have. But, we have the road trek. So I always look at Google Maps, and there's Google time, and then there's road trek time based on how fast the van will go. But yeah.
Oh, and big thing, they had a farmer's market. Every Saturday here in Port Austin, they have a big farmer's market, like 100 and some vendors, crafts, food, otherwise.
Oh, and it takes over the town.
Oh, yeah, literally.
Part of the town was shut down because
the roads were closed.
Yeah, everybody's at the farmer's market. I guess that's the place to be. So.
But yeah, just, despite the fact that it's kind of little and it's up here kind of, not in the middle of nowhere, but it's the end of the thumb, there's actually quite a bit going on in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to check out.
Good place to go. As we wrap up our stay here at Port Crescent, the sun has finally come out, or at least it's starting to, so maybe we'll get a clear sky after all. Who knows? But at least it stopped raining, and even despite the rain, we've had a really good time here. This has been a good park. I'm glad we spent the extra day just to hang out in the area, see what there is to do, enjoy the park a little bit, and just, have a good weekend.
Yeah, it is nice. Nice campground, nice park. There is stuff to do in the area with the little towns that are around. The Dark Sky Preserve is a nice touch. Hopefully this clearing continues and we'll have clear skies tonight. It is our luck that we'll have a almost full moon, I think. But we'll have some dark skies to kind of spot some things, and that'll be nice to see. You'll get a clear sky to enjoy that finally. Yeah. But yeah, this is a good one. I'm going to put this on the list of places I'd like to come back to. And maybe you should check it out. And whatever you want to check out, make sure you just get out there and do it. Keep on trekking.
And we'll see you out there.
The campground and a dark sky preserve, which is in a day use area a couple of miles from here. And it's all along the shore of Lake Huron.
Yep.
Got anything to add to that? I thought we were talking about history.
I thought you were going to history. Okay.